Doofbiff sat stiffly, one eye on the doorway to his left. It had been a long day, and as soon as it opened and that blasted human stepped out, he could finally end it. Two of his hands typed into his small personal compute bank, while a third idly cleaned his instruments. Doofbiff had barely had the chance to use them lately, but was hoping this human would provide that opportunity. At long last the door opened, so silent and swift it almost seemed to disappear. Doofbiff rose to a half-crouch, eager. But instead of the human, it was healer Smetik, his boss, who was then followed closely by Trooper Garnier. Healer Smetnik spotted Doofbiff and called to him. "Ah, Assistant Healer Doofbiff, I've just finished with Trooper Garnier here, and we are going to put him on a double dose of Sucrospilla, which should take care of that nasty case of space sickness you've been feeling." Smetnik directed the second half of the comment to the trooper, who did in fact look oddly pale for his species, almost green even. Doofbiff nodded gratefully. Just before the human, there had been a Bobonian navigator that had come in suffering from some kind of norovirus. They had been training half-digested waste material, and Doofbiff had of course been the one to clean it up, after filling the prescription for nearly a dozen medicines, all of which were longer and more complicated than common sense should allow. So Doofbiff was grateful to have a short, easily filled prescription, even if it was one under tight control within the ship. He suspected that it was an extremely potent form of medicine, to warrant the time locks and double keys, probably something to do with the hearty nature of human composition. There was a muffled ding as the prescription Doofbiff had just finished arrived on the trooper's phone, who nodded, thanked the doctor, and wobbled from the office. "Any more today, Doofbiff?" Smetnik asked, bending to stretch his upper third. It doesn't look so, Healer. I believe we are finished unless there is some emergency," Doofbiff replied. "Great, let's finish up for the day then. Get me a list of what prescribed and to who for my review, and then you can be off." Doofbiff nodded and set off to work, eager to be finished. It was only his second day on the job after finishing his schooling a few months prior. The variation of species on a single ship was astounding, and made it incredibly difficult to keep the various treatments straight. Of course, they had medbots who could tell you which species would react badly to which medications, but every individual seemed as different as each species. He quickly compiled the list the healer had asked for, then double-checked to make sure nothing was missing. Except... that was odd. And there, again, and again. Doofbiff stared at the list, uncertain, before standing and approaching Smetnik, who was seated in his office, playing a new human game that had just come out. Something Theft Auto 7 was the name, apparently. "Healer Smetnik?" Doofbiff asked tentatively. Grunted Smetnik, not looking up from the authority figures he was attempting to outrun. "I noticed something odd in the prescription list," Doofbiff trailed off. This was enough to pull Smetnik from his game. What did you see?" he asked sharply. "Oh, well, Doofbiff stammered. "I just noticed that Trooper Garnier came in with space motion sickness, and received Sucrospilla." Doofbiff scrolled through his list, and then Gunner Orlevsky came in with a headache and also received Sucrospilla. "Oh, and then Sergeant Smith came in with back pain and they also received Sucrospilla." Doofbiff looked up in confusion at the now smiling Smetnik. "Ah, yes, that old question. Tell me, Doofbiff, in your training did you learn much about human biology or physiology?" Doofbiff answered in the negative. "I thought not," continued Smetnik. "Have you ever wondered about that? I mean, humans are everywhere. They make up a third of the military leadership in the Grand Council, have crew on every ship, and are the most effective infantry we have. And yet they teach little to nothing about them in training. That never struck you as odd?" Now that it was mentioned, of course it appeared strange to him, but he hadn't noticed it prior. Smetnik took Doofbiff's silence as his answer, and spoke again. "Now, part of what I'm about to tell you is a secret. The if you tell anyone you'll spend the rest of your life in a virtual prison type secret." Smetnik took a deep breath before launching into his obviously pre-learned lecture. When the Grand Council was first started, and humanity was admitted to the galactic stage, there were initial growing pains. Humans on their home world already had an incredibly robust immune system. They then augmented that immune system as they advanced, until all but the most complicated forms of disease and ailment had been eliminated from humankind. Their approach, though, was unorthodox. Instead of simply eliminating the virus or bacteria that cause these types of diseases, they allowed those organisms to exist and instead made their bodies stronger in order to protect themselves. What this means is that humans are the most deadly creatures on the planet, due to the simple fact that they carry germs that are harmless to them, but fatal to the rest of the galaxy. Fortunately, most of those germs need to be passed through human fluids, which was unfortunately still an issue. Much of early Grand Council diplomacy was of the horizontal kind, apparently, and today even that issue has been solved. The point I'm driving at is that on the whole, humans don't get sick, and if they do get sick, they aren't sick, but humans don't know that. I remember when I first entered this field, we spent weeks and an unknown number of credits trying to figure out exactly what was causing some prevalent mystery ailments. It was a headache, no pun intended, for all of us. Then we figured out the source. Not the body, but the brain. Their brains, in some weird form of self-preservation, were telling them they were sick, when in reality they were totally fine. Don't get me wrong, their symptoms were real, but they were causing it themselves. We couldn't figure out what to do until we talked to a human doctor about the so-called placebo effect. Apparently human brains are powerful, but dumb. All we have to do is trick their brains into thinking that they are getting medicine, and it's going to help. And guess what? It does help. So now we save a fortune and a mountain of paperwork by pretending to treat them. And they still get better. Crazy galaxy, innit? Dwarfbiff could only stare, certain that Smetnik was hazing him. Oh, and it works with their emotions too, Smetnik added offhand. Get them to tell themselves that they're happy, and they'll be happy. Colour has an influence too, but you must be careful. Too much emotional manipulation can have, unintended side effects. Dwarfbiff sat, trying to gather his thoughts. So, you're telling me that the human race, the race that controls most of the military functions of the Council, has brains so powerful that they can and do make their bodies sick, simply because they think they should be, and the solution is to deceive their brains into thinking they are going to get better, and then they do get better? Smetnik nodded, turning back to his game. Yep, but it only works if they actually think that they're being treated, hence all the mummery. So if you tell them and word gets around, I will personally ensure you end up on a prison barge. And not as a healer. Dwarfbiff swallowed noisily. Healer? One last question. Smetnik nodded, eyes on his game. The thing you said about colours influencing their emotions? Yes? Dwarfbiff flinched nervously. Which one inspires lust?